any questions you may have, either today or tomorrow. So Julia, thanks so much for joining us again. What do we make of this close below that technical level that we've been watching the past few days, 5163?
Well, we want to see a reclaim of that level over the next couple of sessions, but for the time being, the market down by 0.7%. We can read anything positive from the session it is that it was on light volumes, so not a lot of conviction behind this move down. Only $3.6 billion worth of stock being traded today. We did see commodity prices down lower, so it was the material sector which did a lot of the damage, and that's really on the back of global growth concerns. We saw softer data coming out of the US today. We saw the China HSBC numbers, and they came in at a read of 50.4. And we've seen a number of figures over the last couple of sessions really demonstrating that we are seeing the manufacturing picture, the global manufacturing picture deteriorating. All eyes will be on the European Central Bank tonight. Expectations are that we will see a rate cut to a record low of just 0.5%. And really, this is a lot of what's driving the yield play at the moment around the globe and into safe haven assets. The fact that we are seeing almost 0% or 0% policies in places like Europe, Japan, as well as the US, and of course here in Australia, we are expecting to see rates to continue to fall. And that's what makes sectors like the telecom sector so popular. Once again, we saw Telstra reaching an 8-year high today. And it wasn't just Telstra, we also saw TPG as well as Singtel reaching an all-time record high. Discretionary stocks were also a highlight, maybe not the department stores, but we saw a Flight Centre coming out with a profit upgrade. Super Retail saying that sales had increased, and we also saw Kathmandu doing well. So those three discretionary stocks all hitting all-time record highs as well. And in the financial space, we saw BT as well as Bendigo and Adelaide, Westfield Retail Trust and Dexus hitting 52-week highs. So while the market was down lower, there were some highlights. Of course, the downlights was mostly in the material space, the majors being off. The gold miners still seeing pretty sharp falls. Medusa was down by almost 10% today, and we also saw Perseus down by almost 5%. And here domestically, we also saw the building approval numbers, which saw a drop. So stocks like Boral down by 3%. We also saw Brickworks down by 2.9% today.
Company-specific news today. It was interesting to watch Atlas Iron finishing up more than 4%. A couple of days of pretty good news for the company. Really breaking it out of that downward spiral, I suppose.
Atlas having a good day, and this is really on the back of, I guess, speculation by the market that it could gain access to infrastructure assets of Fortescue. And this is really quite important. If we have a look at what Atlas is doing at the moment, with Horizon 1, it's ramping up to 12 million tonnes per annum. That's probably by about 2014, and then another ramp up to 14 million tonnes per annum, probably by 2016. Now, the infrastructure is crucial for the second part, and that's Horizon 2. Now, this is probably more conceptual at this stage, and this is the ramp up of McPhee. This is probably going to be about 13 million tonnes per annum, and if it does happen, it's probably going to be about FY18. But really the key question here is that the infrastructure hadn't been sorted out, and if we run through some theoretical numbers, it would probably be about $800 million to set up the mine, and then about $1.2 billion to do with the rail infrastructure. Now, if Atlas can get access to this infrastructure at a cheaper price and at an earlier date, that would be a positive for the stock, because we know what's happening in terms of iron ore is we're going to see huge amounts of supply coming onto the market by BHP Billiton, Rio Tinto, as well as Fortescue. So timing is going to be important, because Atlas doesn't want to come on with this new supply when iron ore prices have dropped off because of the increased supply. It wants to come in earlier to the market and lock in some of those high iron ore prices which are around at the moment. So it has to do with two things. One, in terms of access to infrastructure and the cost, and two, I think in terms of the timing of its ramp up to take advantage of the current or around about iron ore prices instead of the low one, when we do see a lot more of the bigger players coming online with supply. So Atlas Iron having a good day today. I think the stock was up by about.
Another company getting attention today, Julia, was Flight Centre. It was one of those companies that did actually hit a record high. So is there more upside for Flight Centre?
Well, as long as Australians keep on going overseas, it's looking pretty good for Flight Centre, because that's really what's driven this upgrade. So they are forecasting profit to be between $325 to $340 million, and that's up from $305 to $315 million previously. We have a look at Flight Centre. 60% of its earnings comes through from the leisure sector, so that's really Australian travellers, most of that coming through from overseas travel. And at the moment, when you can get a deal overseas, a one-week package which is cheaper than flying domestically for a weekend, you can see why a lot of Australians are headed overseas with that very high Australian dollar. So as long as the Australian dollar remains high and international travel remains high, this is a positive for Flight Centre. I guess one of the risks is the other 40% of its earnings comes through from the corporate market, and this is highly tied to things like business confidence. So business confidence is an important read for about 40% of the earnings, but that profit upgrade, the forecast upgrade coming through for Flight Centre. Good news in terms of the companies. By the end of the session, though, the stock was looking pretty flat. It had a good session, reached a record high, but then a bit of a pullback. So in the end, a pretty flat performance by Flight Centre.